like Paul always had to put frequently in his letters, the gospel is not intended to be an encouragement to sin. I'm not encouraging anybody to be snake bit just because Christ will cure it. Don't do that. But the fact of the matter is that we have some very beat up Christians, and they too are just as saved as the best of us. Now, the judgment of God, it's not something that I've spent my life looking forward to. From the time I first became aware of the presence of God, and that I've told that tale before. It happened up at PCA, and I'm teaching this kid to sin, Johnny Diggs, and suddenly in the back of my mind, I became aware that there was a God, and he wasn't happy about it. It just came. I was in the third grade. Johnny was in the second grade, and I was teaching him to cuss. That's, whoa, that's good. He was innocent. It wasn't, well, I was corrupting somebody, busy doing it and laughing about it, and suddenly just a niggling suspicion that God wasn't happy, that there was a God and he wasn't happy. It kind of happened at the same time, right? And that awareness didn't take long to develop into fear of judgment and punishment. You know how we're raised in the church, judgment, that's coming, and you're going to get it. And they're right. They're right. I'm going to get it. Oh. And so I don't think everybody relates to God this way. I did. Even after being baptized, I still felt pretty uncertain about whether or not I was saved. That's one of the reasons, we hammer on security so much here. Because of people like me, and I was raised in the church, and I know that a large part of the church was afraid of the judgment of God. Which side you're going to be on, what's going to happen after I die? Am I going to think I'm saved, and then when I die, I wake up to a never-ending nightmare, I'm really rejected by God. See, and so I think a lot of people in the Church of Christ, we prepare ourselves for disappointment. It's just something that happened. I don't want to be too disappointed, so I don't want to feel too secure either. And so that happens to us. It's not right. It just happens. It's who we are, right? Okay. So anyway, now there's a passage on the screen. Hope, anyway. Let's see, where is it? This is Revelation 14, 6 and 7. And now there's this curious juxtaposition between something that's good news and something that we might consider to be very bad news indeed. And this is Revelations 14, 6 and 7. See, and John, he's up there and he's seeing all this stuff happening, and he sees this angel. He's flying in the midst of heaven. He's got this everlasting gospel to preach to everybody that's dwelling on the earth. And everybody, see, and he emphasized it too. Every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. I mean everybody. When I say everybody, I mean everybody. Okay. And he says, and so the message, this gospel message that's being preached is, fear God, give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come. What? Yeah. Let's see, and worship him that made heaven and earth and sea and the fountains of waters. But what's this about the hour of his judgment has come? Okay. See, in verse 6, he's got this everlasting gospel. Now, according to Strong's Concordance, I've got it on my computer. See, the gospel means a good message. This is a good message. And see, those of us who've been in church for a long time, since we were kids, we knew that about the gospel. We were always saying that gospel is a good message, a good news of the gospel. And so what we have here is an angel with a good message to preach unto everybody that dwells on the earth. Now, isn't that nice? He's got a good message, a good news message for the people who are on the earth. All right, so now if you read down this chapter a little bit farther, it's not a very big chapter, so you look down there and you can see how this gospel that this angel is preaching, this good news message, actually works out in reality. Just how this very good news actually plays out in the physical world. See, and so this is the same chapter, same circumstance, the same context, but we go down to the end of the chapter, kind of look ahead, see. And this is, now it's Revelation 14 through 20. That's the end of it. And so John says, I looked, and behold, there's this white cloud, and somebody's sitting on the cloud, and he looks like the Son of Man, like Jesus, and he has on his head a golden crown, his hand a sharp sickle. We assume that's Christ. This other angel comes out of the temple, and he cries out with his loud voice. He hollers up to Jesus on the cloud, and he says, thrust in thy sickle and reap, for the time has come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. It's all ripe, ready to go. And so, and he that sat on the cloud, this is in verse 10, see, he thrusts in his sickle in, and he reaps the earth. He thrusts the sickle in, cuts whatever he's cutting, right? And another angel comes out from the altar. He has power over fire, and he cries with his, there's a reason for that plays out some other place in Revelation anyway. He cries out with his loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, same thing, thrust in thy sharp sickle, gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. I mean, this is it. The judgment is time to reap. Time to reap. And so the angel thrusts in his sickle into the earth, this is verse 19, and gathers the vine of the earth and casts that stuff, whatever it was the grapes, what other grapes represent, he casts them into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse bridles, about 5 feet tall, and by the space of 1,600 furlongs, that's about 200-mile stream of blood is what that is. Now, there we got the picture. What makes this good news? What's being described here is not good news. It's a horror. This is awful. See, the context of this chapter is the time has come. The time has come. And Jesus talked about this back in Matthew 24:22. We won't put it up on the screen. It's where the extinction of mankind is a distinct possibility. Jesus said that. If I don't cut these days short, there's not going to be anybody left at all. That's what this is describing now. Okay, and so the good news, this angel is preaching is this everlasting gospel that he's proclaiming to everybody on the earth is that the people of the earth are now close to being extinct. They are being destroyed in this great winepress of the wrath of God. The good news of the everlasting gospel that this angel is proclaiming is that judgment's come. That's the good news. Now, see, from the way I was raised in church, that kind of, makes my hair stand up. I never wanted to hear about judgment. I was not happy about judgment. I was afraid of judgment, see. So the question then is, how in the world can the fact that most of the people on this earth are going to be destroyed, how is it possible to construe this in any way as being good news? I mean, that's not good news. See, now, actually, it is. It is good news. And I'm going to tell you why. How come? The fact that the judgment is coming is very good news. Now, most of us, we're old enough. I don't think you guys are. You're young. The rest of us around here, we're old. Many you're not. Does anybody remember that we used to have a part of the police force called the Vice Squads? Does anybody remember that? Well, I'm really old then. Okay. Well, we used to, and I've never encountered anybody that worked on the detail, but their job was to find especially homosexual people and caught in the act or in the attempt of the act and put them in jail. It was illegal to practice that in America. And I knew about that. And so when I was sometime around 18, late teens or early 20s, I don't remember exactly when, I read the story. See, it's a novel. And part of it had to do with this homosexual guy. He was trying and failing to evade arrest by the Vice Squad. He was in a bar, where that stuff took place. and it had been infiltrated. He was warned that it was infiltrated by a member of the Vice Squad, and so he was trying to, to escape being arrested and basically outed. And so the way the book was written was it was intended to arouse sympathy for the poor man's plight, right, and others like him. It pointed out the seedy places that he had to be in, and where he sought others of that nature, and his terror at being hunted and caught. And I was sympathetic. I was too, and so it did seem unreasonable to me that to invest money and effort to criminalize and investigate and prosecute what was essentially a private act between consenting adults. Why are we doing that? Just let them go. See, these things, while they're evil, they really didn't have a direct effect on my life. See, they were, that was just confined to some back bar place, And so why don't you just let them have their own way among themselves? Why in the world? Well, they're not hurting anybody. Just leave them alone. Let them go. And so while things have changed, see, things are different now, aren't they? It's not like it used to be. See, that my so tolerant attitude was born out of sheer ignorance. I was stupid. Okay. It's plain now these days why in the nation of Israel in the Old Testament certain sins were capital crimes punishable by stoning. Now we can see why. See, the thing is that the only reason that sin was just some private act between two or more consenting adults hidden away in some dark corner someplace, it's because society was forcing it to be hidden away in some dark corner in the world. That's the only reason. It didn't want to be suppressed. Sin doesn't. It only was suppressed. It was suppressed. And if the lid's taken off, see, sin given a chance, it's going to come roaring out of those dark places in its attempt to consume the nation as we are experiencing today. It's consuming ours now. See, by its nature, sin always seeks to be justified. It wants its own justification. It always tries to maintain that the practice of sin is reasonable and right. It is the right thing to do. It's our very nature. Well, yeah, it is your nature. It doesn't make it right. But it is your nature, all right. See, but the very presence of Christ as embodied in the church, that's us. See, it's a condemnation of sin. We're here by our very presence, and the message we preach, and the message we accept, and the message we live by, it condemns sin. We're saved from our sins. So whatever they are, right? And so sin, it rages against that which exposes it for what it really is. See, Paul pointed that out in Romans 1:18. See, it's inevitable that the sin will seek to suppress the truth. That by its nature, sin's going to suppress any speech in opposition. It's happening in the California legislature right now. Just heard they've got a bill they either passed or working on or trying to pass, whereby any literature is banned, is illegal in California that condemns the sin of homosexuality. Okay, let me put that out there. Okay, that it's illegal to attempt to counsel a person away from that particular sin. There's plenty of other sins, but just that one happens to be at the forefront right now. But anyway, it's going to be illegal for anybody to counsel somebody, attempt to counsel somebody out of that, even if they request it. Okay? So what's going on? I don't think it'll stand, but that's what I'm saying is that's just an illustration of what's happening. The fact that the sin is really trying to run the show now. Okay. See, the thing of it is that the sin's always going to seek to silence its critics. It's always, and with malice, it's going to happen. See, there's no placating sin. You can't. I was wrong to ever think that. The nature of sin is to be perpetually at war with Christ. See, there's no détente with sin. There can be no getting along with sin. We can't do that, obviously, now. There can be no demilitarized zone, or no neutral ground, or no common ground, or no sympathetic understanding between sin and light. The nature of God and the nature of sin, it makes that impossible. That's not going to happen ever. I don't know what I was thinking when I was a kid. I was a kid. I didn't know any better. All right? No better now. If the church is in the ascendancy, then it's inevitable that sin's going to be suppressed, right? There'll be no right to commit sin. You don't have the right to do that. No. That's what the church says. Okay? It's the nature of Christ to suppress sin. And if sin itself is in the ascendancy, then it's equally inevitable that the knowledge of Christ is going to be suppressed. See, in this battle, there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. That's all. There's no third place. No place in the middle. See, it's right and proper that this be the case. If the one is in power, then the other must and will be suppressed, pressed down. Has to be. Since sin is coming into power in this nation, see, it's free to do its shameful acts, even in public view. I mean, my brother Bill, I don't have the time to relate it. He's got, horror tales. He's involved in the movies, or was, and some of the things that he told me, it's hard to believe. See, but it's free to proclaim, sin is free to proclaim its unrighteousness as being righteous. Yes, that's right. This is the right thing to do, see. And there's churches, for the churches who seek to accommodate sin. See, sin is never placated by accommodation. You might think it's going to be, but it's not. See, by nature, sin always attempts to dominate. And in the process of trying to accommodate these churches that do that, when they seek to come to a concordance with sin, they're just going to be destroyed. That's what's going to happen. In other words, not that they're going to hell. I didn't say that. They're going to simply lose their power to glorify Christ as churches of Christ. That's all. That's what happens. I can see now, I was wrong to think that sin done in darkness wouldn't have any effect on our lives. That was a mistake. See, because of that attitude back then, me and others like me, then now Christians are losing their businesses. Baker up in Oregon. Their ability to practice their chosen field. That girl that can't she can't even take the college course in counseling, because she believes that homosexuality is a sin. That came out, so they dropped her from the course. She went to court and she lost. Even in the military, our chaplains are no longer free to mention the name of Christ. Okay. In fact, this happens so often it's not even news anymore. I was wrong to think that sin would be content with its own freedom. Sin doesn't ever live and let live. It doesn't do that. Sin is, sin's implacably opposed to any freedom but its own. And its freedom is actually licensed. I was wrong to think that sin done in secret, that if you do sin in secret places, that it wouldn't be a danger to society. That's okay. I was wrong to think that sin practiced in the dark would have no effect in the light. I was wrong to ever think that the effects of sin would be confined just to those who practice it. Not true. And so, it's plain, it's very obvious in retrospect why in the nation of Israel back in the Old Testament God was so severe with sins like idolatry and adultery and bestiality and sodomy as well as murder. They were all capital crimes. See, now the good news of this everlasting gospel is this. It's not going to go on forever. That's good news. That's great news. We're not going to have kids and grandkids and great-grandkids and great-great-grandkids destroyed by the sins of the world. That's not going to go on forever. Okay? The good news is that there's going to be an accounting. Satan first and foremost. But there's going to be an accounting. Sin's going to receive its just reward. For all this wickedness, there's going to be a judgment. There's going to be an accounting. That's good news. Judgment's always been part of the gospel. A lot of times we'd overlook it. But that's actually the part of the good news of the gospel. See, we'd always juxtapose, oppose the gospel with the judgment. But actually, they belong together. It's really part of the gospel. There's going to be, all the stuff that's happening, there's going to be an end to it. That's good news. Whether judgment is a joy or a nightmare, that just depends on which side you're on. See, it's our joy that there's going to be a judgment. It's to our joy that the city is going to come, which no sin can ever tempt in it. A city that's light, that's all light, has no dark corners ever, where no hidden corruption, no festering wickedness, no spot, no stain. It's all light. It's our joy that sin has been found out and judged. You know what's our joy? That sin is found out and expunged from the dark corners of our own persons. That's good. When we ask for God to examine us, you find any sin in there? Good. Root it out. Get it all gone. That's the purpose of that. God's not looking in there to condemn. He's looking in there to forgive and to wash it, make it white as snow. That's, judgment in our case is wonderful. The promise of judgment is truly a joy for the redeemed. It means that the final and eternal end of sin and sorrow, pain, and death, it's a final and eternal vindication for those who believe. That's good news too. For those who refuse the mercy of Christ, not so much. Okay, we know that. You see, the same, God, his judgment is fierce against sin, and it's implacable against sin. And so, what we're facing is a fierce and implacable judgment that absolutely demands retribution for sin. But that same fierce and implacable judgment demands our resurrection because our sins have been paid for. The judgment is not our enemy now. It was. But now that judgment of God is our greatest friend. The justice of God demands our resurrection. And that promise of judgment is when our resurrection happens. The judgment of God, really, it's not, and it shouldn't be seen as a fear for us. We shouldn't do that. The good news is a sure coming judgment. See, that's also the same promise of the everlasting redemption of our bodies. They go hand in hand. See. The justice of God and the judgment of God is an everlasting asset, is a wonderful thing. And we should joy in it and look for it and speed its coming as Christians. Okay? So now it's time for the invitation song. But you guys are all on the right side. What I'm saying is, don't be afraid. The coming of judgment, of the judgment of God, is going to be an incredibly wonderful thing.